I'm just setting myself up to create with my new Mermaid scale tiles. These are die cut, so that's what they look like when they come in the package. You can see I've already been doing some art today. So this is them outside of the package. I'm just going to put them just to one side for a sec. So for die cutting, you also need an actual die cutting machine. My version is the deep sea die cutter, which is mermaid themed, of course. It matches these dies perfectly. And I've also used a combination of my paper pad and creating my own papers using my Jelly Arts plate, sprays from my incredible inks, and of course, beautiful watercolors. And just in passing, this is the new updated tin that's even a little bit more lightweight for traveling. I've got 3 different watercolor sets and I've put all of my watercolors in that one set. I'll do a whole video about it when the new tin comes out. Basically, I've put little magnets on the back and I just find it a really convenient way to have all 36 beautiful colors just sitting there. I can't close it. I can't travel with it like this, really. This is for where I primarily do my art on my table. Anyway, let's get back to the die cut. So here is some scrap paper, leftover paper from, like I said, making different backgrounds, making my own journals. I'm using the paper from my journals. I'm using beautiful watercolor paper, all different weights, all different types, all different techniques of creating marks on my papers. And these are just the scraps, the leftovers that I keep to one side. Fantastic for die cutting. So with the deep sea die cutter, we open it up. There's a little recipe on the actual platform, so you always know which bits and pieces. Before I started die cutting myself, I was a bit worried that it was complicated, but it isn't. And it has a little recipe card there all the time. So you've got a platform. I've got hot pink cutting plates. Put your paper down and you put your die cuts, the little templates on top. You can move them around so you can decide what part of the paper you want to cut out, because I've got different designs all over the paper. And then I thought, oh, this particular little bit of scraps would be cute for tentacles as well. So I pulled out my Tentalicious die cut set. And I've got to say, one of my favorite things is trying to work out, like little puzzle pieces, how to get the most out of every bit of paper. So I crank this through, and I'm always pushing my poor die cutter to its limits with weird papers and things of odd sizes and fabrics and goodness knows what. I haven't managed to break it yet. I'm quite proud of it. So I always like to put it through a couple of times. Because I am cutting out watercolor paper, the dies tend to sink in and I don't need to tape them down. If it was a slipperier paper, I might put a little bit of washi tape or purple magic tape, low tack tape, just to keep the dies from moving and slipping about, so I don't end up with little double cuts in, and cutting off the design. But because it's watercolor paper, they do seem to sink into it in that very first press, and I find I don't really need to tape them, which is very interesting. It doesn't work on all papers. You can experiment and see for yourself. So I'm just laying up different pieces. As you can see, there's 4 different size scales in this set. And I don't even really know if I need to go through twice all the time. Sometimes I go, do a few passes. It's just to make sure I get a really, really nice, clean cut. If I do pull something out and I don't get such a clean cut, like on this one, I only went through once because I thought, oh, can I just go through once? It's very easy. You can just trim with a pair of scissors and release. It has an impression, so it's easy to follow where to cut manually. But the dies definitely have a much, much neater impression, much neater than I can cut with scissors, and way, way, way more detailed and a lot quicker. So when I'm die cutting, same as when I'm doing my jelly plate or doing stamping or something that involves equipment or specific art materials, I tend to do a whole bunch of it at once. Because once you get on a roll, it's fun and it's easy to just do a whole bunch of things and then put them aside as your own ephemera, as your own little tools to use at a later date. And then you've got a little stash of things that you've created. They're not just purchased ephemera, things that have come more from your hands, and they're a lovely thing to mix with things that you've purchased or collected. So even if you've got something specific that you've pulled your die cutter out for, or a project, make a few little extras with some scrap paper that you might have around. You never know when they're going to come in handy. Now, if you are into lining things up and perfection, you're going to love the downloadable tile maps that I have on my website. I've got the link in the description box below. You can stick your beautiful tiles straight on here and everything will line up just gorgeously. And there is a map for each size of tile. So let's put these away. I like to organize my die cuts just into little plastic envelopes so that I can see what they are, I can see exactly what I'm looking for, and they just get them out of the way and I don't end up with a great big mess. I've got a journal. This is actually an altered book. It's a book someone gave me about Frida Kahlo and her life in Mexico. And I actually did a workshop over there a few years ago. We visited her house. It's amazing. A million trillion times recommended. And I think that I want to put these tiles, I want to create something in this particular journal. Frida loved mermaids in her house. She had a little mermaid collection and just made me feel closer to her because I also love mermaids. I also have a Frida online workshop that you can find details for. If you're watching in the future, it's already started. If you're watching when I recorded this, then it's about to start and you can find more information on the link below. Okay, let's get tiling. So I've got my little map there for the smaller size tile, and I actually found that quite helpful in helping me work out whether I want similar colors clustered together or whether I want to have more differentiation, make that tile shape really obvious. Either way could work out. I've also got, because this is an altered book, let me zoom in a little. There is some wording, of course, text behind, and some of the words, like I can maybe scale around them, and then this made me place the tiles oddly, and I thought I kind of like just there, kind of like that. I kind of like that they're not sitting in exact formation, that, you know, maybe I could place them in a different way as well, make a pattern out of them, but also to let certain words peek through. So I've got Frida had her own reality, which is totally a thing. And then I put some tiles on the eyes and then absolutely fell in love with that idea. I thought, well, maybe I could draw the eyes back on afterwards or not. I'm not sure. You know, all she wants to see is mermaids. Just like me. And yeah, just placing them. I've got a little glue stick. The one that I'm using is it's made by Ranger. It's from Diane Reevely. It's just very, very small and it works. And I love these little glue sticks. So I'm just putting everything down, just a tiny bit of glue on each little bit because I might want to move them around and I don't want to have to wrestle the scale or rip all the paper up to do so. So just enough to keep it down, but you know, not too much. And then once I'm totally settled and sorted and thought, yes, this is what's happening, then I can come in and give a proper gluing down. I could even come over with matte medium if I haven't got anything that's too water soluble underneath. I could give a spray of fixative because I do have watercolor on a lot of those tiles and inks and things. They're usually a bit grabby on the watercolor paper I've used, so they should be okay, but a a matte fixative, a spray of that, let that completely dry off, and then go in with matte medium. I could do that. Just to give everything a final seal, glue it down a little bit more. If I didn't think the glue was enough. It usually is though. And then I like the idea of having some of the tiles perfectly aligned and some of them disappearing off, fragmenting off, gradually lifting away, overlapping, having all of these different combinations. To me, this has meaning to it as I'm creating, as well as it's fun for me to make, which is my main priority, which is why I create art and love creating. And so it does, but it also has that deeper meaning, that dreamlike state. Now I'm going to try and just get the two parts to match. So I didn't even say anything about the face. The face is actually more collage. It's a color copy of something else that I've done, and I had just stuck on a background that I put some watercolor on. I think I may have clear gesso or gesso in the background, and I've just stuck this face on there randomly, thinking that it might be helpful at some point. I felt she really needed gold, big gold earrings, very Frida-esque. So I've used some of the gold squid ink from my collection and just letting it appear elsewhere too, just on the top of the eye, just sort of blocking in where the other earring might be. I could have also added some to the tiles, but it is actually a stamping ink. I don't want to have those blue lips in this. I can start altering the image that's underneath. So I'm using some of my velvet pastels and the little tin of cream pastels. They are very hard to find, the cream pastels. I still have some on my website, but if you're looking elsewhere, you may have missed the boat on those, but you can get them from a time of me recording. But the velvet pastels are just a even softer version of them. I've used them there on the cheek, a little bit on the nose, and I've used one of my batten blenders to just soften that out. She looks a little bit clown Frida at the moment, and I'm using, this is just an underlayer. I'm going to come over with something a little bit more cohesive. I want to warm up her skin tone, and of course I need to add some hair, because physically or aesthetically what Frida Kahlo is very famous for is not just her brows and her just strong, beautiful face, but also her beautiful hair, her traditional hairstyles, the gorgeous, beautiful flowers, but not just traditional, but from both sides of her family as well, from her European heritage and also her Mexican heritage. It was just such a wonderful combination. And the way she brought her heritage into just her daily life, I find very inspirational, as well as very beautiful. So as I'm creating this, I want her to be Frida-esque, Frida-inspired. I'm not trying to recreate Frida herself. It's a clear delineation in my mind. Sometimes I do like to draw and paint actual Frida, and sometimes it's more of a Frida-esque response, because she had such a strong aesthetic, and it's a very beautiful aesthetic to play with as an artist. And I just love plaits and intricate hair. I love drawing them, and I love looking at it as well in real life, where people attempt the impossible with gorgeous hairstyles. And I'm trying to just play with that. I've got the scales, this mermaids on her mind idea, whether I turn that into more of a headdress or whether I just let that be this fracturing of the mind. There's a lot on her mind, this colourful mind. It's sort of symbolic of many things at once to me, and just playing with adding more of the tiles. So these things can evolve, but what I really loved about the tiles is having them, that combination of all the beautiful different colors. And I remember creating most of those little backgrounds, those little scraps that are there. A lot of them I created with nieces, nephews, friends. This is the kind of thing that I like to do when I have friends to my studio, because this is something we can do together and it's something I can keep. So I get big pieces of watercolor paper, and I get people to spray and use stencils and jelly plates and have a really good time. People don't have to be able to draw. You can just express yourself and play with color. And there's no finished result because Auntie Jane keeps it all. And then uses it up in her art, which just gives it more meaning to me. So I've got that happening. And then in some of those pieces, I'm also testing watercolors. So one of them, I tested my final sample of watercolors for the very first time, and just felt so privileged and happy that that was happening. And that's what is in those scales. So it's just, I try not to hoard precious things. I like to use them and have them sitting there in my art, not sitting in a box somewhere. Have them sitting in my journal so that I can enjoy them and think, each time I use them and think, oh, wow, that's, everything is telling a little story. I'm using Mermaid marker as a wash, and also the thicker black lines are created with my License to Quill pen. Mermaid marker, very, very water reactive. License to Quill dries very quickly, goes on just about everything, and dries very, very permanent. I've put a unifying layer over the collage and the drawn pieces of the neck to bring that together. I still need to warm the skin tone up. This is just an underlayer, and I'm putting down some Mermaid marker in a color called Jellyfish. So this is a water reactive or a watercolor, liquid watercolor type ink. And it's a really beautiful muted lavender. It's in my original 12 sets, one of my most used things. This color is just gorgeous, sort of the color of a bruise, a nice fresh purple bruise, which is, the color of blood under your skin, if you have fair skin like me anyway. So I find it a good shading color for fair skin. I don't know why the camera is wiggly woggling so much. I apologize for that. It's because we've clicked over into supersonic speed. I don't draw this fast. And I did spend quite a bit of time later just trying to even up her jawline. I wanted to balance out the black lines in her hair, and I added a lot of black lines, outlines, which isn't something that I usually do, but I wanted to balance these things. And art is just, for me, it is playtime. And that is what an art journal is for me. I'm working on things as I go, and it's all an experiment. So sometimes you do something, you think, oh, right, don't really like that. I just keep working into it. Or if it's really going downhill fast, I just start working on a different part of the drawing, or turn the page and work on something else. And I wanted to try something to brighten up the skin tone and add a little bit more color. So I've added some bright yellow Mermaid marker, and then controlled that and moved it around with a bit of water and just my paper towel, just so I've got a little flush of that color. I'm not really sure if she's completely finished at this point, but my Frida-esque mermaid scaled thought, thinking journal page is finished for now. You can find the mermaid scale, the tile set, at Spellbinders and JaneDavenport.com and amazing stores all around the world. And if you want to learn more about drawing and painting and mixed media and backgrounds and art journaling and all of that beautiful stuff, you can join me at my website for one of my online classes where I teach all of this joyful stuff. I hope to see you there. Bye.